So previously we made this little feedback form here, right, using just HTML. So if I go ahead and open it with Safari, you can see it here. If we look at the code, you can see that here. And right now this doesn't attach to anything. So for this form to actually work, we need to do a little bit of PHP. Before I get directly into how to make this work for this, let's make sure that we have PHP actually working in general, and that we can sort of show that it works just on our local machine. Now I'm going to do all of this from a Mac. If you're on a Mac, you should have it pretty much installed already. If you're on a PC, you might have to do a little bit of installation first, and the process might be a little different. So we can look at that in another video. So if you're on a Mac, cool. If you're on a PC, look for that video instead. So I'm not going to work directly in this HTML file. I'm going to go ahead and just create a new plain text file in text edit. So this is not going to be a .html file. It's going to actually be a .php file, which tells the server to run it as PHP code. Now, what is PHP? So PHP is actually a programming language, and it runs on the server. It doesn't run on the client's machine. So normally when you make a web page, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all that runs on the client's machine. So if they do view source, they can see all of that code. PHP does not. PHP runs on the server. It's all on the back end. Instead, the server just sends over what the client needs, already turned into HTML, and whatever accompanying bits that it might connect to. So anyway, let's actually start doing it. It looks very different. We're not going to get very deep into it. We're just going to do what we need to, and I'll explain as we go. Nothing too hard. So like HTML, it uses angle brackets, but we start any PHP code with a question mark and PHP. And we're going to close it with another question mark and the closing angle bracket. So in that regard, it looks fairly similar to HTML. All we're going to do right now is we're just going to tell it to print, and we'll do a string, just hello world, and semicolon. And that's actually all we're going to do for right now, because we want to make sure that it actually works. All of your lines in PHP have to end with a semicolon. It's sort of like a period. This is a line of code. And let's go ahead and save it. So I'll click up here and switch this to my desktop, and we'll just call this test.php. So it has to end in .php, otherwise it won't know to run it as PHP code. Now we can actually try running it. So we have it here. Now we can't run it in the browser. Well, we can, but it doesn't exactly work that way. So if we open this with like Safari, if we even try to, if it'll let us, okay, it won't let us. And if we go to Firefox, nope. And if we go to Chrome, nope. If we already have Safari open and we try to open it this way, it won't open that way either. So it works a little different. To be able to actually run it locally, we need to do a few things. So on the Mac, we can go into Terminal. All right, for starters, we're in our home folder. To switch to the desktop, just make sure it's actually working and make sure that we can run PHP on our machine, we can type cd, that's change directory, and go to the desktop, because that's where I have my file. If yours is somewhere else, you might want to move it to the desktop, or you're going to have to go there instead of desktop. And we can type PHP and test.php. And if PHP is installed, if it's working, which if you're on a Mac it should already, this should work. There we go. So it worked. Now notice there's no line break. It's a little weird, but you can see the hello world is there. It worked. Now that being said, we want to actually run it like a website, right? Because we're building websites. So how do we make sure it actually works like a website, like in the browser? So let's just go ahead and reopen Terminal. And this time we're going to do something a little different. We don't need to change directory. Instead, we need to type PHP from the start, -S, localhost 8000. That S must be capital. If you write a lowercase, it won't work. And then you need localhost, and then a port number. So now that we have this running, this is running like a web server on our machine just locally. So now we can actually try testing this PHP file like a web page. So if we go into a browser of your choice, you should be able to type in localhost, and I put in 8,000, so it needs to match. And then since it's on my desktop, /desktop, and then test.php. There we go. So now we have hello world, and we can actually see here that it is pulling stuff from it. So these were the requests to the pretend local web server. If we go back into here, we could also tell this to print like 2 plus 2. And if we refresh this, we get 4. So a key difference between a programming language and a markup language is programming languages can't do math. Of course, they can do other stuff too, like loops and conditionals and variables and stuff like that. But that's a little outside of the scope. So there you go. That's the start. Now that we know that this works, we can actually try connecting our form to it and see if we can get our form to actually send stuff. And so we can close that now and close that now. And right here we saw Control-C to quit. So we do Control-C to turn off our local web server. And we're good, and we can close this out. And in the next video, we'll actually create the PHP code for this form now that we know that it actually works.